We're finishing up Acts chapter 2 this morning. And here the Holy Spirit has come, and these followers of Yeshua, 120 of them, they are speaking in languages that they have never learned. So, and here thousands of Judapu from all over the world have gathered, and they are now looking at this strange thing that is happening. And Kupitru gets up and he begins speaking to the crowd.
Would
you play verse 23? This is Acts chapter 2. Okay, that was 23?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, notice, Kupitru says, you have crucified Yeshua. But it was all in God's plan. And then he says in the next verse that God has raised up again Yeshua from the dead. And Peter explains that what has happened is just what King David had prophesied in one of his prayers. And so he quotes several verses from King David's prayer in the book of Psalms. If you here Kupitru quotes some verses which, if you want to, you could read in Psalm 16. But one of the things that David says is spoken of in verse let's see, in verse 27. Would you play verse 27?
ai ho apa pe beautiful sin ko apa da ma khu da wi ku cho be ku no
Vase crucial lo nya cho mete hero ne vita ke va set to prede lucky ni do to ne no so no lo ke ne ke ya sa se it prede luku to.
So here, Dawi has said that you will not leave me in hell, which is the place of the dead in the Old Testament.
ba ba pho no ma khu da wi no ha hina o ma ne de ke ve da ma ngara ku to wa ngara ku ma da ke ni se alla ku ne ma ke ya sa tho ne ma twa da ngara ku ko
And he says, you, Lord, will not allow your Holy One to be corrupted, his body to be corrupted.
ma khu da wi na hina o ma bia se da ne pu ku si pu mo si te he da a ji na chom ne lango si te he na ma asana da ne no mi pia e pe si ni to go he sana mi mu me pe ni to.
Let's make sure we all understand what that means. Dawi is saying in his prayer, you, Lord, will not allow my body to rot when I die.
Ba khu da wi a he na ma asana a si hi cho na ma a he na da ba ite mi te khu da wi no ha ji chom ngo a thwa khri pu de pre ne he me na ma a he na da ba khu da wi a sa ke na ma an ne na ma asana da a pya ke che to ko sa ke tho pa te ma sana thi ide solo to mo ko.
So Petru explains that here Dawi is not speaking of himself because we have in Jerusalem King Dawi's tomb, his sepulcher, his place of burial.
He wasn't talking about himself?
Right. He said Dawi could not have been speaking of himself because his body has been turning to dust for a long time.
Muna pe sing ye ko ha ba pho na ma ni ne na ma da khu da wi na ma a he ba ani ide a so ga to a he na ma da a he angi ma to ko he mi te na ma pe sing ye na da khu da wi a so ga tho ga ke na ma a khali asana a lo khu ko di ko ha lo khu no asana ani ga ani si na ma a so ga lo to asana a khri ga lo to ko to khri lo ke ko.
And Dawi is not referring to himself as the Holy One. He's referring to Messiah.
Mina ba he ma ite chomra phu khu atwa le ite na pre kripu a he ma a he ani ma to ko a he da ma da ite Jishu ko.
So long ago it was prophesied that Messiah would die a wicked death and then he would be raised again before his body began to rot.
Mina au cha da ke ma khu da wi wa ke na ma ai shu ha ngi tho ko ha ta na ke ma Yeshu no ha ite ke me sa ke lu pa ma na da ba ani me so a so le to ke na ha sana ite a chu pre ka sa pa ta hu pu pa no.
It only takes a few days before a body begins to break down.
Ni ba pe ni asa tho ne ma au ve ta na so na ba ite a so me so ke a ke na ko.
If you remember when Yeshu raised Lazarus from the dead, and Yeshu told them to move the stone from in front of the tomb.
Ni ba si to ma me na da ke ma Yeshu ai so ite jupu sina da ba ame ite ek tho ko se ma ite Lazarus no ko Lazarus asa ga tho ba mu na jupu ate Yeshu na ai so jupu sina da ba Lazarus a lo khu na ma ite phya pha ke ma lo ame bi pe lo ngi na ko.
At that time, the people were afraid that it had been a few days and there might be a bad odor.
Imanada ite bana ke jupu si ke si te na ma se he ko he ke ne ami mo ke lo khu ne ma sana da anume no so lo pa na ko.
But Yeshu, he explains, was raised on the third day before that began to happen.
Lazarus?
I mean, Yeshu was raised on the third day before that began to happen.
มันน่ะเยซูเนาะว่าอีเตบอันนี้อันบ่ซุนน่ะโทรแล้วตัวเขียนให้อันน่ะเอาโทรก็ใส่ก็มีเตนะมันสนะซุนเฮาเนี่ยมันสนะเป็นนี่สิเนี่ยมาซอกันโลก
And let me see. In would you play verse 32? Here, this is Kupetru speaking.
กุนแน่นมาเด้อมาคุยตัวไอ้เบชินะกี่สิที่นะ
Omra me chupre ka khitho Yeshu yede tesiro lo pe yete hinduma pe chupe lu prekhase de pe ku khale pe una atesi itho ka khe e area kya.
So, Kupetru says that we, the apostles, and some of these others who you see before you now, are witnesses that they have seen the risen Yeshu.
บ่คุปตรูไอ้ชัวสินะเด้อสิแมทเทอร์มาเพรดิญญาพูดตะเฮสิไอ้ตะเฮสิเนี่ยมาชื่อมาเด้อเพรดิญญาพูดตะเฮมาเด้อเป็นแมทเทอร์ต่อชื่อมาเด้อยูชูเอาก็โทก็เส้นน่ะก็
So, Kupetru is giving them solid, good, strong reasons to believe that this is Messiah and he has been raised from the dead.
นี่บ้านน่ะมาเด้อคุปตรูไอ้เบชิสินะมาไอ้โชตัดตีเรนเนี่ยสิก็ให้เด้อมาเกียร์ตะเพรนมาเด้อเอซีมาไซอ่ะก็สนะเด้ออาสกะโทก็เส้นเอซีแมทเทอร์ต่อจะไอ้โชแล้วลบลีจะเอซีก็
The New Testament actually says that Yeshu, after he raised from the dead, was seen by at least 500 people.
นี่เด้อลีจะเซกุนมาให้นะเด้อให้นะบ่ยูชูอะก็ทก when he was on his way to heaven or when he was alive
Before he went to heaven.
บ่
After he was raised and before he went to heaven.
okay บ่มาเด้อยูชูอะก็ทกเอาทุกเพรกเซนะให้นะบ่มันน่ะเคอะเทเลดมาคูอะเคตัวนี้อะเทเลดมาคูตัวก็มันน่ะเคนะมาเอาไปได้ให้คุณมาเกียสิเอาลอบลีมาจะง่ายอ่ะจะเอซิเมทเทอร์ก็เซมายูชูอะอีเดียวทุกเพรกเซนะ
And that day, there were 120 of them that saw the risen Yeshu and were now speaking in these foreign languages.
นี่บ่เอซิเมทเทอร์ที่เฮสิเอาตียานั่นเนี่ยเซนะก็เฮซิเมทเทอร์ยูชูเอาทอกก็เซนะว่าเอซิที่เฮนะมาคุณเนี่ยอะทอแกมาเด้อชื่อๆได้ก็เยมาเด้อไอ้เบ็ดเทมาลังงูเด้อเอซิสิเนี่ยตัวมันเด้อไอ้เบ็ดเจก็
And Kupetru has already told them something else very important.
ดูคุไปตรงน้อยโชว์ทัวไอซีติเจอมาเด้ออาสนะอันดัวทุนเนี่ยติเจออูก็
He has already said to them, you already know about all the miracles and dramatic things that Yeshua has done when he was here.
เท่านั้นคุไปตรงน้อยโชว์ทัวไอซีนะอ๋อมาสิสิเนี่ยทลอมาอีเตสิแมสินี่โหทก็เฮมันเด้อยูชูโอปาเด้อเฮคัวเคนะมาอาสนะเด้ออีเตอเมลมีเตอเมเมทเจกเซมาเพรบิสบล็อกคีเตเฮสินุกลอสินะมีจอเจกเซกเยมฮูเด้อจอเจตัวเทนะก็ยูฮูเดกลอสินะมายูชูอเมทอเทเบกเซอเมจเจเนเนบ้านมาจูรุพุสิมาสินี่ลอก็
So they have solid, strong reasons for believing that Yeshu is the Messiah.
อันนี้มันเด้อจูรุพุสิเตเฮสินะมาเลเจนะมาเด้อยูชูเตเพรนะมาเอซีเบมิซิเปลกเอซีเตเพรนะมาอาสนะเด้ออาสินี่ต่อจังนุกลอ
They have the prophecies that we've talked about before that have come true.
เด้อไอ้สิ่งนี้นะมาไอ้สิ่งนี้นะเด้ออีเตเด้อเดลิเซก็ไอ้ชัวแห่งนี้นะอัตเนอร์มาอัดกูทอไปไอ้แห่งนี้นะบ่อันทอนี้เนี่ยนะมาไอ้สิ่งนั้นสิ่งนี้
They have the knowledge of the miracles that Yeshua has done.
ตัวไอ้สิ่งนะว่าไอ้สิ่งนี้ตัวนี้หูตัวมาเด้อเยซูมีนอกใครเต
And they have all these people that have seen the risen Yeshua and are witnesses of that.
ตัวโซจะเจอนะมาไอ้สิ่งแมทเธอชื่อมาเด้อ Pernya put the head a he choice in other as it in my shoulder. I met her Yeshu of Thomas and I can't go ahead.
You know, to establish the truth of something, when there is a trial, when there is a law trial, you probably are familiar with some of this.
Yeah.
When there is a trial, witnesses are called to bring testimony.
Nida seeing him make a video, you go ahead, pay Benjamin Sana Dalaji, win he. Ma ite kerana upama kia the prenamisa ke hun close in ma the akaguna ma be hepa ma kia si te hima huda I met her normal at the pre-missa the pre him.
And witnesses are very important to establish the truth of what has happened in for instance, a murder.
Nida ba kia si te hima met her no ite kia pre met her ma kia pre-missa the pre-nema. As in a man be I be show, she should whether as a met her sin I be hilla honey to I be should whether a tone of the hinomeco.
And then after hearing the testimonies, the jury has to decide whether they have to decide what the truth is that they have heard.
But kia si te I show to other as a met her cry te show to nema. Kia si but the poem mother as in a own ani dama ke show can he as in a ma beni da ite me the oba the print ma show ma to a sui a be ni damina niga.
Sometimes people in court lie, and there has to be a decision of whether that person is telling the truth or not.
Ni the word can ma ite kia or the kaku huda daluji bis in ma te ma alehoni aleho go he mino hada kia the poem mother a be ni dame me or the print ma a he ma a si he a he su a he la ho to na he ni ne ma isi te ma be ni da to.
Today, some people may read the Bible and they may say, how do I know that these witnesses are telling the truth of having seen Yeshua risen from the dead?
Ni te ra kunne tanna si a kia si a paralisa sa na ma te ma shudera hina o mana ite pising ye chemi te da prenya pu te he si na ma a he sho ma da ai sho ma da te estimate to Yeshu ka thoga se na ma ese he sho ni na ma asu na to na ma pising ye chemi te na.
That is why people have carefully, very carefully read the Gospels and read about very carefully those things that have happened, those things that are written here.
Mena tu ke si o in ne da esina a parle ne da lisa se mete na ma si singi na da to bete a su bete na.
And many books have been written about what they see as they examine the Gospels.
Ni tu pada esi mada pali sa ke sin ma o in da esi ragla de sa o si da hena order esi pa ke na ma esi na singi te esena a si iswai te na ma esi sa o si ma la ko na o te heba.
And to put it simply, God has given us in this record a strong, shall we say, ironclad, an iron strong record and an iron strong proof that what we read is the truth.
Ani da ba Yeshu na ma jamran ma ada to cho pe ada ta pe ma lisa na ko he da lisa na ma e chu pe da a su ma a to ba te ko te ba a do me pe na da o ite lo pe thwa se na da pe ma thakun ne sin ma thwa se na da ma lisa e chu ne he me no ha sa na pe nge na ma a o da pe lu ji ba te ko te na ma ite a o lo ko de da ma ite lisa ku no ko.
One thing to remember is this. Those that gave witness to having seen the risen Christ. For instance, the apostles, who were the official witnesses, they risked their lives to give that testimony, to tell the world that.
你的贝星爷讲系，贝多妈讲系的，就是嘛的，是嘿么糊的，嘿那哦贝么特嘛，耶稣呢，所个头发个头个些，après soit 的嘿是嘛，啊那的 après dunia pusi 的那个系，我那阿妹一做一说个也是，一说应呢嘛，不一说阿克呢嘛，是呢嘛，啊贝是现在呢的贝新里个系，咪的呢嘛，不是嘿说阿克呢嘛，的呢嘛个是咪实际是是。
The apostles had nothing to gain by telling the world that they had seen the risen Christ.
你那朋友不是的嘿那嘛，是呢嘛，อันนี้จะตัวก็เหรอไอ้โชว์ก็สิเด้อบ่อเมทัลต่อมาเด้อยิชูก็ทอกเส้นมาไอ้โชว์บ่เต็มมาเส้นเด้อไอ้สิ่งนี้มานี่รู้สิเฮ้มันกลอสิมาตัว
They risked everything, including their lives.
นี่เด้อไอ้สิ่งนี้อันลุยโชว์คือนะมาเด้อไอ้สิเตียชุบเพลนมาอีเตียเส้นเด้ออันเด็กแกจ้องนึกก็เฮ้ไอ้สิชิๆตัว
Of the 12 apostles, we only have evidence that one of them died a natural death.
นะอ๋อบ่อีเตปิสิ่งนี้ก็เฮ้เด้อลิซ่าก็ไหนโชว์เป็นมาเส้นเด้อเพลนึงยาผู้สิเอาเพลชั่นนะเพลก็เฮ้เอาตัวแต่เพลมาเด้ออาสเกเด้ออาสนะอันนั้นดูว่าอาสเกเอาแต่เพลก็
I won't say anything more about that. We'll move on.
อันอันคนมาลูเฮเอโชเอปตัวกัน
Kupitru goes on to say that this what you see, the tongues of fire and the languages that are spoken, this is the Holy Spirit that God promised to give Yeshua.
ว่าคุณประตูนก็ไอช่วยสินะเด้อซีเมเธอคุณแน่ซีนี่ซีเมเธอมาเด้ออีเตคริปูซีเอากลักคูดูมามีตัวมาเด้อเอซีไอเบเทมาลังโง่เด้อเอซีสิเงี้ยตัวนึงที่เห็นสินะมาอีเตจุ่มเรอออลยาสีก็เห็นแต่เนื้อเคมาสนะอเดแต่เสร็จซีปลอกไปนะก็
Remember, Yeshua had told the apostles, wait for the promise of the Father. After I go to heaven, wait for the promise of the Father.
ทว่าเยซูให้ทั่วมาเพลงนี้ผู้สินะให้นะอปอนี่เด้ออีเตเวททั่วเด้อมาขวเนี่ยอปอเกษมาเด้อแต่เนื้อเคจมเรอเมกเสเด้ออปอก็เสจมเรแต่อ้อนแรงอันกูนะ
Would you play verse 36?
ผู้เนื้ออคูอาเคอิสราเอลอักลีอาเลียลอปลีซีสิเบเซเงตาเตนะเยชูเดสิมุสิชาเอเดโดลยาฮิทิโลอิตปรานจอมราเดียชูชาฮอลูนาเอมาเบียเจมาอามามาคริมาอามามาฮอคูเปโตรเฮผู้เนื้อ
When Kupitru said this, the crowd was, it says they were struck in their hearts and so ashamed of what they had done in crucifying Yeshua.
นี่บ่คุณเปโตรเฮบ่เคอะโทนะฮะสนะอะเฮนะเด้อบ่กยันนี่หัวนะฮะเอาอินเนี่ยเด้อไอ้สินะสนะสิปลอชเกจอนมีเตเนี่ยมาไอ้สิสิงเกคยาสนะเด้อไอ้สิมินามิเชเรนมิเชนเนี่ยเด้อไอ้สิมซายาก็
And so thousands of them said, what shall we do? What should we do now?
อันนี้เด้อกิเยซีเอาจะเพลตรีซีเจ้าก็ให้เด้อไอ้สินะโอ้โหนะให้นะเอากุนเนี่ยนะมาเป็นลบบีมีใครเต
And Kupitru said, change your mind about Yeshua and be baptized to show the world that you are now followers of Yeshua.
เพราะว่าคุณเปโตรให้นะกุนเนี่ยมาเด้อซิโลแต่เนี่ยเด้อเยซูอะไรแกสิเนี่ยมาแต่นี่คู่แกก็ให้นะบ่าเอสนะเด้ออีเตเจกสินี่นะเธอมีเตมาสิเจกสินี่เธอเนี่ยมาสิอีโชโลลอปลีสิโดไม่ลอปลีให้คุณบ้านนะเด้อสินะมาเด้ออีเตสิเพลละคราจมแม่ละงูถีบ่
Why don't you play verse 41 to the end of the chapter, verse 47.
Okay.
Kaya de azu eku Petru ate hebe dunia ite hene. Ahlu kalahya anena chi Robinu de nyine kaya zuka nyakaro akakene etia kupo esine. Apu o apresu rijo. Esi pini lehya te shute kede aku isu senye tianike anede predenya putehi ao. Ro esi bosu ke kunilu e o rolu ro kujobe rolu predenya putehi melu te tapa kisu kisetehina temetikli atemate diatehi aku aki upu presa isi betu zenya lo plichomreato. Lo prezu ite putihine a uta uploluro tede a una esi tehine azuta mechuni dilu de prena de pre esi isheta kia a ute de zena atamuta te tehiro a mechu pina kayade a luru lo tehi esi chu upu ukia rolu de lutia hu pu de niro esi se prochuzu ezu upelu de prena de prero Sacrosella iro o rolude esi atido hipia apu esi tu setia tomariara upu pre seplo uku esi biate biplo etiape esi kayade anibe temesi pleka te hede esi prezu e te plomu akupu de nyiza.
So that was the beginning of a remarkable thing that happened in Jerusalem.
Ni ba atapona ma pe metha an peni ho na ma sana Jerusalem sina wa anana asime mi ko ke esingi ko.
Any questions?
Le shu data chiche o
Any of this?
What was it? I heard something about gold.
They for several reasons they began to share the things that they had. Now, first of all, there might have been. We know later in Jerusalem there was a lot of persecution, and they had to really help each other out.
Okay.
Okay?
Do you want to tell them?
Yeah. What's
Anira Jerusalem ko no pisingi na da oi ne esina una mission te presina ba sana kripo sina ma asi mission ne esi uko.
And persecution from other Judapu may have already started, and they really needed to share the things that they had and help each other out.
Ani mi mete da ite kripo sita hina ma una asagete asagena ho sana o au kegete hina ma asina be o plus hulu abe mi tra na te pre.
And also, someone made this. Someone made this observation also.
To wada ba au pa the prima apa kena ma san ai si shopa ka pete chugo.
These Judapu had come from all over the world, and they had planned to just stay for the festival and then go back home.
Ni da Judapu si te si ha plus hulu no ma at ni na da si ha plus hu thulu te na ba ka kya sa hi.
But now they had discovered the Messiah and had become followers of Messiah.
Ni mana esi ha to ke na esi ni ho te ma an je ni esi ni ho tholo te na ha gunne na ma esi na sila khwa ke da ite chomre ka.
Certainly many of them would have wanted to stay a while longer to learn more and more about the Messiah.
Ani me te au ene da esi to kripo sina ma te se ma au ene ne ke da esi na asi ka pa da hido go he asi okay ke mitene ma asi ni ho ni da po e po da Messiah re ka.
So there was a real need for them to help each other out with food and things that they needed.
Ni me na da asana bani ho dum na esi he sho a he na da esi mi twa lu asana da ru si she o si.
Any other questions?
You should help by.
Okay. Well, let's pray.